Join me right now on Kumite Radio is Terrion Ware. He'll be fighting on September 15th at UFC Moscow versus Merab Dvalishvili. What's up, Terrion? What's going on?
Chilling, man. How's it going?
Good. Before we get into that fight talk, I wanted to ask you about a hot issue that's currently happening right now. With Colin Kaepernick and the Nike situation. I seen you post some things about that. Could you kind of break down what your thoughts on this?
Yeah, man. I think it's honestly, it's really silly to people out there, burning Nike stuff they already bought. I mean, like that doesn't make any sense. Um, it just seems like, man, in the country and the world, man, everyone is just, on their phones or on the internet, just waiting to be triggered by something. People just getting upset for like no reason. Like, that man making money or making that ad doesn't, do anything to your life whatsoever. People are just getting mad about it. And I understand people are going to have opinions one way or the other, man. But when you go to the extreme of burning products that you've bought and stuff like that, and like want to protest and say you're not going to buy Nike stuff, it's just ridiculous, man. So that's my take on it, man. I support the message that Kaepernick, is trying to get across. I've said it personally myself. It probably wouldn't have been my personal choice to do the whole kneeling of the national anthem. Just for me, I mean, from the time I was 5 years old, playing Little League Baseball, the national anthem is like something that, has always kind of been big for me. So I wouldn't have taken a stance on that. But at the same time, man, it's like we're supposed to live in a free country where you have freedom of speech and be able to do things like that. And, some of these same people I see complaining about these NFL players kneeling are not saying anything when the KKK is marching in Washington, So it's just it's a touchy topic, and for most people, man. But man, just let people just be, as long as you're not hurting anybody, man. Let people have their freedom of speech and be at that. If it's a peaceful protest, leave it at that, man. Let people speak their minds, and as humans, I think we need to listen to each other, try to find common ground if we can. But this whole just hate thing, man, it's not getting anybody anywhere.
Yeah, it almost seems like burning Nike has become a joke now. People are just
Yeah,
doing it just to do it.
yeah. People were just doing it for likes. They're doing it for posts. It might have started off, in the beginning where somebody was really, really wanted to burn their Nikes, and then everyone was like, oh well, I'm gonna. Because what I'm looking at, I don't see anybody really burning anything expensive. They don't look brand new. These things look like they've been used, so they're not even like. I bet you they have their Air Jordans in their closet still. They're gonna rock the next day. So I think people are just doing it for likes and to get some viewership. So yeah, I don't know, man. It's all hilarious to me.
Yeah, I see a lot of socks being burned.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, let's talk about your last fight in London. Most people agree that you won that fight against Tom Duquesnoy. How long did it take to get that bad taste out your mouth and move on?
Honestly, man, it took a couple weeks. For me, I'm not a sore loser, man. I can accept loss. I can accept my downfalls, my failures. Get back in the gym and work on them. I had worked so hard for that training camp, man. I had three significant injuries in that training camp that most people could have easily pulled out of the fight. I didn't want to pull out of the fight. I did physical therapy to try to get my body as healthy as I can possibly be, and luckily I woke up the week of the fight, a fight week, and pretty good health and being able to go out there and perform the way I did. And to have that taken away from me, man, it was depressing. It was really, I was really depressed for a couple weeks, and wasn't sure, at first, right after the fight, if the UFC would bring me back. I was able to talk to Sean Shelby after the fight, and he assured me he'd bring me back. So that gave me a little bit of relief, man. But I still at the same time I was depressed, and by the time I got back home, man, I've been doing this for 8.5 years, kind of like nonstop. I've never really taken a break, and I just needed a break. So I took about 2 months off, and I didn't really train here and there to help some training partners out, man. But just needed to take a back seat, spend some time with family, and try to just kind of reevaluate my situation. And then once I got tired of feeling sorry for myself, got back in the gym, man, and just found a whole new love for the sport and just growing, and just honestly just coming to terms with the fact that I'm not going to be able to do this forever. I love what I do, and I just need to enjoy it no matter what, and not so much put so much emphasis on the fact of wins and losses. I mean, as a competitor, for sure, I want to win, but also not want to forget to enjoy the ride while I'm doing it. I don't want to look back at the end of my career and maybe I accomplished my goals, maybe I didn't, but I want to look back and you have the thoughts of the journey, like, man, like I'm not smiling at any of it, any of this stuff. So I think that's really just kind of helped me just kind of find a new love for the sport and the fact that I just enjoy what I do every single day.
Yeah, that decision really highlights a big issue with MMA judging. Is there a solution out there in your eyes?
Yeah, I think a lot of times, people are quick to say that the judges are incompetent, which is very true. That is a part of it. Some of them come from boxing and don't really understand, the full game of kicking and grappling and stuff like that. But I think the number one issue is accountability. We all know right now when we're watching a broadcast or whatever, and they read off some of those judges who are going to score this fight, the main event or something, and you hear some of those names, and we just go, "Oh my God!" We know. So if these people have this stigma, and we know, why do we continue to let them, ref these fights, especially these big fights, that have huge implications on them? If we know going in, like when we see their names, we gasp for air and hope that it either doesn't go to a decision or they don't mess this up. If they have that that negative thing linked to their name, why are we allowing them to continue to ref these fights? Get them out of there. Either get them out of there, or reevaluate them, do something to where you educate them to where they're making better decisions. I'll give one example, and I don't want to throw her name under the bus because I heard she's a very nice lady. But Adelaide Bird, you know, um, she's been on, uh, she's been in a lot of boxing fights, a lot of MMA fights where she's made some terrible decisions where it just goes completely, the other way from what the other two judges saw. It's like, are you even watching the fight? And you know, she's still allowed to do these fights. I think this year or last year they gave her like some paid leave or something like that. But if I'm a judge or whatever, and whether or not I'm corrupt or whether or not I'm just incompetent, if I make a bad decision and nothing's done, what incentive do I have to do better at my job or to stop being corrupt if I can just keep getting away with it? And I think that's the biggest problem. That's the number one problem is these commissions not wanting to admit the fact that they're employing people who are doing a terrible job. And then the number two thing is also incompetence. These, I know Big John, we, a couple of me and my teammates, we did a thing where he runs a referee seminar where he teaches, referees and people how to judge. And that's great. I don't see why don't we do that a lot more often, and some of the people that were there for this seminar, they already do great in themselves. They're pretty good. But I'm looking around the room and I'm not seeing the people that I normally see who are messing up fights. Like, you guys need to be in there. You guys need to be trying to fix what's going on. So I think that's one way to try to fix it is to either re-educate them. If they can't be re-educated, then we just got to keep them away, man. It's just like there's requirements for every job skill there is, in life. Why aren't there certain requirements to be a judge, especially when you're dealing with athletes who, the difference? It can be the difference between making $500,000, $1,000,000, for some of these top five guys who get paid that much. I mean, we get a win bonus. We don't win because of some judge's incompetence. That's a lot of money being taken out of your pocket, and I think it's just totally unfair. I mean, no other sport has to deal with that. Why should we?
Exactly. It must be nice to get paid leave for making a mistake. And fighters, when
Right?
you make a mistake, you're sitting on the canvas, knocked out or submitted, and you lose, and you go back and you don't get anything for that. And it's just, yeah, it's something that I think they really need to look at and change it now, not a month from now. They just need to do it now. Now moving on, you played minor league baseball. It is known as a skills game. MMA is very similar in that aspect. What have you taken or developed while playing baseball and moved or transitioned over to mixed martial arts?
I think just the athleticism in general, especially with a sport like baseball, it translates over so much to just MMA, especially the striking part of it, even the grappling as well too, because baseball is such a hip heavy sport where you swing a bat, you have to have quick hips, fast hips. You're throwing a baseball, same thing. So that transfers over to punching power. That transfers over to to being able to move your hips and grappling and stuff like that. So I've definitely taken just the athleticism from that, but also just playing at a high level. Playing for a college program, playing for a professional. You learn how to practice. You learn how to be a professional, how to conduct yourself and things that are expected you at that level. So by the time I got to MMA, even as an amateur, try to conduct myself in that same manner. A lot of guys who maybe didn't play any professional sports or college sports who just jump right into MMA, they don't really have that upbringing in terms of discipline and how things are done, how much hard work you have to put in, how much of the mental side, how much of the being a student of the game goes into it. So I definitely took all of that from baseball into MMA.
Now you're going back to Europe, but this time to Moscow. Did you ever did you ever think that you'd be fighting in Russia?
Um, I definitely hoped, I mean, for me, like I'm a huge Rocky fan, and that Rocky 4 is probably my favorite. So as a kid growing up watching that, I was like, I'm always dreaming like, yeah, go to Russia, fight, and fight in Russia. That'd be cool. They're hardcore fans. I'm a huge fan of Fedor. I mean, I know it's a big country. They love the sport of MMA. And I just love passionate fans, man. Either way, whether they're booing me or whether they're cheering for me, man, it's just a pretty cool. I think it'd be a pretty cool atmosphere. So I definitely hoped, and like now having it, come to fruition is pretty cool.
Maybe you could do the whole Mr. T
There
concept
you
where you're
go.
out there.
I got the mohawk going already.
For sure, like I would love to see that. That would be great.
Yeah.
You're facing another European prospect, Merab. How does he stack up against your previous adversaries?
I don't. I mean, not taking anything away from him. I think he's a great fighter. But I think the previous three guys are some of the the best three prospects in the division. Guys that are going to be in the top 10. I mean, Cody Stevens, I think, is already in the top 10 already as it is. He's fighting Aljamain Sterling. This weekend. If he wins that, I mean, he's probably one or two wins away from a title shot. And he definitely has those kind of skills. Same thing with O'Malley. O'Malley's going to be a star. Tom is a guy from France, and MMA is illegal in France, and I love really banking on him, trying to build that with him. So those are three of the hottest prospects that the UFC kind of has to offer right now, and I face those guys. So I don't think Merab is quite there. I mean, he could be. It's going to be basically up to him or whatever the case may be. But I definitely think he's the lesser of those three guys.
You've been splitting your time at Fight Science between Fight Science and Black House. I know at Black House there's a bunch of guys getting ready for big fights. How is the environment over there right now?
It's a Shark Tank, man, and that's what you want. I mean, the old cliche adage goes, "Is iron sharpens iron," and it couldn't be any more true. I mean, you can't show up to a Black House training session, not on your A game. Otherwise, you're gonna leave, with a bad day, pretty much. You're gonna leave feeling pretty bad for yourself. So you show up, and it's kind of that you know I've been training with those guys for a while, so we all a lot of us kind of have that camaraderie. So we're not out there to hurt each other or anything like that. It's not that type of atmosphere where guys are knocking each other out, but it's still a competitive atmosphere because those guys are not necessarily your regular teammates, and some of the guys are coming in. So it gives you kind of that fight atmosphere that you have to go in and day out, where you need to get used to that. Because some guys they show up on fight day in the gym, they're great, but in the fight day they get those nerves because they're just not used to that that animosity, or maybe your opponent looks at you in a certain dirty look or something like that, and it kind of gets you either too riled up or it gets you nervous. So being in that kind of atmosphere on a day-to-day basis, man, you're going to war, and you're gonna have to put in your A game. They got some of the best wrestlers coming down there and just doing wrestling. So you're in wrestling practice. You're wrestling with guys that are Division One, are going to be Division One. I mean, there's an eighth grade kid in there. Kid's 13 years old and he's taking down grown men. That's the type of level of guys that you have in there on a day-to-day basis. And it's just been great for my career. And they're right down the street from me, so I'm lucky. I'm lucky to have such a high level gym like that. Not many guys have that opportunity to be able to train at a place like that, so it's great.
Has wrestling been a focus in this camp, or has it always been a focus since you've been at Black House?
It's been a focus, from since the start of my career. Because for me, I come from a striking background. I've been doing Kyokushin karate since I was 5. I did amateur boxing when I was in high school as well. So striking has always come natural to me. So I didn't start doing any kind of grappling until I started MMA, which was 8 years ago. And so it's always been the focus of me trying to catch up. I'm trying to catch up to these guys who've been wrestling since they were 5 years old. Doing jiu-jitsu since they were in their the early teens. But definitely, as going to Black House, that's definitely been a main focus. I mean, you have top notch, coaching there from Kenny Johnson. You have a black belt in jiu-jitsu under Hickson, with Kevin Casey. You got guys like Bubba Jenkins, one of the best collegiate wrestlers, to ever do it. And you got countless guys coming in there, getting instruction from those guys. These guys are, these guys are, JUCO, champions, future Division 1, champions, All Americans and stuff like that. So, going in there, it's hard not to, get on the mat and not be focused on that, because, you want to, wherever you can go to get the best from any aspect of MMA, that's what you want to do. And wrestling is definitely one of the better places at Blackout. You can get at Blackout. So that's been a main focus of mine in going to Black House, but also just sparring, some of these killers, man. We have tons of UFC guys, tons of Bellator guys, guys in the Professional Fight League, guys that are in the LFA, guys that are champions, man. So you're just in there. It's like I said, it's a Shark Tank.
With that said, you still go back to your home, fight science, work with your head coach. What has been some of the things that you've been working on with him?
Just continue to round out my game. My coach Ian Harris, and then my other coach, my boxing coach, and Adam Lerner. They've been with me for a while. They know my game inside and out. I mean, those guys have just developed me into a well-rounded fighter. They know what I need. They suggest, we go here, we go there, and do these things. I just been working on just rounding out my game. Ian Harris is, great jiu-jitsu coach as well too. But he's been around the game training, fighters like Dan Hardy, Chad George. He's trained a ton of guys. He's been around the game for 20 years. Adam Lerner's been around some of the best boxing minds that there is in the sport. So those guys just round out my game very well. They know me very well, and they get the most out of me.
All right, one last question before I let you go. This sport is about wins and losses at the end of the day. You guys are both going into this fight on losing streaks. Has that dynamic pushed you further mentally in training?
Oh, 100%. The UFC's always been the goal from the day one that I started. I want to be able to compete in the biggest organization in the world, and this is what's on the line. It's pressure, but pressure can do two things. It can bust pipes or it can make diamonds. And for me, whenever I'm under pressure, I think that's when I perform at my best. So this training camp is just, that's been in the back of my mind. I'm not letting it, deteriorate me. I'm not letting it depress me or get me down or worry. I'm just going to go on there. I'm going to do what I always do. I'm going to bring the fight. I'm going to fight as hard as I can. And at the end of the day, that's all I can do is lay all the chips on the table. And I plan on going out there and getting the job done and getting the finish.